Good afternoon, welcome to the UK Column News. It is the 22nd of January 2015 and it's just gone 1 o'clock. Myself, Louise Collins, Brian Gerrish and Nick are here in Plymouth. A bit windy and rainy last night.
It was. We're not talking a lot about the weather at the moment because the news is just so important. So we're going to do what we did yesterday, crack on.
Go on then.
And you've got the first slot, I think.
Yeah, of course. Sharon Evans from .com Children has spoken out about bullying and intimidation surrounding the child abuse inquiry. She told MPs at a select committee that Ben Emerson QC had in effect taken over the chair position since no official chair had been appointed and that he had made threats and intimidated other panel members. Mr Emerson called Sharon Evans' allegations baseless, but there's been more infighting and controversy surrounding this inquiry, where it's believed that a panel member, Barbara Hearn, has been in talks with whistleblower Peter McKelvey, who was all over the press a while ago, former child protection manager. It was McKelvey who actually sparked the Operation Fernbridge to start. And former victim Andrew Lavery has put in a complaint that Graham Wilmer, who is a panel member, had sent threatening emails. So this inquiry is looking more and more like a shambles than ever before, and still no chair.
Still no chair, still no inquiry, but what I find absolutely fascinating, Louise, is we've got threats and intimidation coming into a panel which is supposed to be working to protect children in Britain. And what better introduction than to come straight across to Melanie Shaw. So Melanie Shaw, of course, a child abuse victim herself and key whistleblower to the abuses that went on in Beechwood Children's Home, Nottingham. Some 100 child victims, according to Notts Police themselves. But what's been happening with Melanie? Well, she's back in police custody. This is a graphic that's been circulated on the internet. But yesterday we did manage to speak to Melanie at one point in police custody. We know that Melanie was basically okay, but she's in desperate need of proper care because of the trauma she suffered. The police were denying her access to her Mackenzie friend. So Melanie has been using a Mackenzie friend during her court proceedings. The police were not interested in giving that Mackenzie friend any access to Melanie. And Melanie was also not given the PACE leaflet, which would outline her rights. This is something that should be done for any person taken into police custody. So we've got her rights stripped away, no Mackenzie friend, no PACE leaflet. And this is the key point, that Melanie is in desperate need of the proper support and care. And to date, Nottingham City Council has not provided any dedicated care worker for Melanie Shaw. So, as we always say, welcome to David Cameron's Britain in 2015. And this is how the British government, the state, treats highly vulnerable child abuse victims. Well, one lady who isn't getting too upset about child abuse victims is Harriet Harman. And here she is in the Mail with an extraordinary outburst against UKIP. She's describing it as a party led by Neanderthal sexists. And she says women should beware of the party in a provocative attack. So Miss Harman raging here, absolutely raging against UKIP, dangerous party, sexist, abusive to women. She said, Miss Harman said she criticised those women UKIP does have in senior roles, such as community spokeswoman Suzanne Evans, for representing a party that she said wanted to take their sex backwards. But what this woman's not interested in is her history supporting the National Council for Civil Liberties, where at that time, they were supporting the pro-paedophile organisations, Paedophile Action for Liberty and Paedophile Information Exchange. And this was the lady who originally wanted the rules on pornographic photographs of children to be relaxed. So the sheer hypocrisy of this woman to be speaking out and attacking UKIP for how it treats women, and yet her whole background is highly questionable. Should this woman be in Westminster? Certainly should she be at such a high profile within the Labour Party. Clearly no shame, no guilt. Very dangerous person in our opinion because of that background. And if viewers or listeners would like to get more detail on this, they might care to go to YouTube. This was a film clip put up by child abuse campaigner Bill Maloney, where he questioned Harriet Harman and indeed Ed Balls over institutional paedophilia. But as you see from the film clip, they are just not interested. They are desperate to run away from Bill Maloney.
And that's exactly what they did.
And that is exactly what they did in the film clip.
Yeah.
And to force this point home, we're just going to say here is an Express article. This is back in January 2014. What it's actually saying is a former female MP was involved in a paedophile network at the heart of government, police have been told. So this is another thing that's come to the surface. So we say, shouldn't Miss Harman be more concerned at protecting children from female paedophiles in Westminster than spending her time attacking UKIP? But it follows across into the Lib Dems, of course, and here we've got Bill Maloney challenging Nick Clegg and saying why hadn't he actually taken action to stop institutional paedophilia, and what did Clegg do?
Run away.
He ran away.
Can I just say, apparently, Bill spoke to me yesterday and he said, have I seen the videos? Apparently, he practically shut down all around Westminster the other day at a child abuse rally. So I only spoke to him briefly because he was on a train.
Right.
But I will have a dig around when I have 5 minutes and see if I can find video clips.
So we're saying that child abuse protesters, was this at the meeting where 300 people were at Westminster?
I think so.
And we're saying that there's essentially a police close down and essentially a media blackout because there's been no substantial reporting by British press and media over this terrible scandal of paedophiles acting within Westminster and the British establishment. Well, one man who clearly understands what paedophilia is really about in the political scene, in our opinion, is ex-Jersey Senator Stuart Savray. We've shown this before. There is a video clip of him on YouTube where he is heavily criticising the BBC for failing to investigate child abuse properly. But this is what he says. Governments love child abuse. No other criminal activity gives such control over those who commit it. And of course, we are seeing that even Tory whips in YouTube film clips are prepared to say that members of Parliament who had run into trouble with their activities around young boys came to the Tory party whips in order for them to help cover up the mess. So we know that at the heart of Britain's Conservative Party, the whips, very powerful men, know all the dirty little secrets. They were working to ensure that the paedophile activities of serving members of Parliament were gently brushed under the carpet. Nice. And you also spotted the intelligence report that we're now being told has been buried within the National Archives. And of course that report again warning back in the 1980s of paedophiles and members of Parliament indulging in what was then described as unnatural sexual activity. Yeah, exactly. So we're in a very dangerous place in Britain today. Nick Clegg is a man who we feel is grossly underestimated by many people. He sits in the background, but of course he is a very powerful man within the Privy Council, and we just say, isn't it remarkable that this very powerful man, what did he have to say when he was heckled on the question of paedophilia? Well, really the Mail's headline says it all, because the link is that really those campaigning against paedophilia themselves pose a security risk. So what an extraordinary situation in Britain in 2015, that if you stand up to be counted, as of course Robert Greene has, and you're going to campaign against child abuse, well, the government's very frightened of you because you are the problem. And we'll just lead into this one here. This is back on the subject of state surveillance. And of course, it was David Cameron's massive drive for extra powers for GCHQ and the security services to be able to spy on encrypted emails of journalists who are now rated as if they're terrorists. And in order to get this propaganda piece across, David Cameron made big of getting a film crew into GCHQ to show what good work they're doing. Well, we're going to add a piece here because we were alerted yesterday to the fact that MI5 is now desperately recruiting mobile surveillance officers. So we say to spy on whom? Who are they going to go out on the streets? But good news for all of us, because they require people who are under 6'1" if you are male, and I believe it's under 5'8" if you're a female. So you're in the bracket, Louise.
I am, yeah. Shall I apply for a job?
The pay is very, very good. We're talking between £27,000 and £31,000 a year.
That would take me above the poverty line then, apparently, according to one of my articles here. That's good.
Well, this is obviously the solution to poverty in UK. We've got a solution emerging live on TV this morning. We're going to solve poverty in UK. We're simply going to move the poor people across to become surveillance officers for MI5. Well, are we joking? Well, of course not. UK Column always produces the proof. So here is the advert for mobile surveillance officers, reference 98. The department is MI5's operational department. It's London-based with UK travel. Some shift work involved, so you have to work 2 weekends in 5. And it says, a diverse team is vital to our work at MI5, protecting the community against threats to national security from terrorism to espionage. Nowhere is diversity more important than our mobile surveillance team. Surveillance is one of the security service's key investigative resources. Mobile surveillance officers follow subjects who've been identified by intelligence officers as potential threats to national security. It's all about observing people and places, either on foot or by vehicle. And to do that, it's vital you can blend in with your environment. So, because, Louise, I know that you've spoken out on the subject of paedophilia, and clearly GCHQ is interested in you because therefore you must be a low-risk terrorist.
Yeah, that's me.
If you got a job with MI5...
Well, according to some people, we're all MI5, but carry on.
Well, if you got a job with MI5 and that income... You could then spend your day following yourself because you're working to...
And save time for anybody else doing it.
Yeah.
My really interesting life. Great.
If matters weren't so serious, we could probably laugh more about this, but think of what is really happening here. This is equivalent to the Stasi system where ordinary members of the public going about their business do not know who is working for the state or not, who is reporting on them. Other family members recruited by the state reporting on family members. If you want to check the details of this, have a look at the MI5 page here.
You could probably apply online, couldn't you?
I think you can.
Oh, God.
But if you read this, it's a day in the life of a mobile surveillance officer. And it's a lady called Sunita. And she said, well, she started out in hotel management, but she knew she wanted something different. And she's ended up on the streets spying on her fellow human beings based on somebody higher up the chain saying, we think this person is a terrorist.
Nothing like a bit of integrity, eh?
It's brilliant, isn't it? And we produced this little photograph a while ago, but we think it fits perfectly because this is Downing Street. This is what Britain is now like. We actually said, well, is it Putin's Russia? No. It's democracy in Britain in 2015. And essentially here we've got, where are we? Welcome to number 10 Downing Street, fences and submachine guns to protect a man terrified of the British public.
Sad.
It's incredible, isn't it?
It's incredibly sad. And especially when you go back to sort of when JFK used to drive out, people out there cheering, open-top cars, and
shaking
people's hand, engaging with the people, and then we have this muppet excuse me, but
Yeah.
who has to encase himself with bars, guns, you know, it's
Protection
squad. It's just.
But
hello?
what it shows, Louise, I think, is how frightened Britain's politicians are of ordinary people who become informed as to what our politicians are about.
So then get them employed by MI5, I suppose.
Possibly. Well, that leads very nicely to your favourite man, I think.
He's at Davos at the moment. You know who.
So he'll be having a chat to
He'll be having a
Prince
chat to
Andrew.
Prince Andrew, yeah, maybe comparing notes or something.
I understand that Prince Andrew was going to announce his speech at Davos by talking about the little legal problems going on in the background.
Well, I'm going to be covering that in a minute. Don't say too much.
I won't.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so Blair, who is at Davos, has had to start defending himself over the Chilcot inquiry's new delay in publication. The report is now not expected, what a surprise, to be released until after the general election. And it's believed the delays are being caused by the people who would be under fire, people such as Tony Blair, who said that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction and responsible for killing hundreds of thousands of people. I think that part was you, Mr. Blair. But apparently he ran away when being confronted by journalists. And also the 29 letters that happened between Bush and Blair are reportedly going to be published alongside the report, if and when it comes out. And I'm just going to read the letter that was sent to the Prime Minister by Sir John Chilcot for the benefit of the listeners. I last wrote to you in November 2013 and to Sir Jeremy Hayward in May 2014 with an update on progression of the Iraq inquiry. My colleagues and I have made very substantial progress since my last letter, and I can confirm that individuals are currently being given the opportunity to respond to provisional criticism of them in the inquiry's draft report. That is an essential and confidential process. It would not be appropriate for me to comment on it in any detail. We intend to finish our work as soon as possible, to do so whilst being fair to all those involved, until we have reached and evaluated responses from all those who have been given the opportunity to respond. I cannot give an accurate estimate for how long it will take to complete our work, but it is clear that it will take some further months. I therefore see no realistic prospect for delivering our report to you before the general election in May of 2015. Our report will be based on a thorough and comprehensive account of the relevant events from 2001 to 2009. We are determined to fulfil the responsibility placed on us to identify lessons to be learned from UK's involvement in Iraq, including the way decisions were made and actions taken over this long period. In that context, I am pleased to record that since I last wrote, the inquiry has reached agreement with Sir Jeremy on the publication of 29 of Mr. Blair's notes to President Bush, subject to a very small number of essential redactions alongside the inquiry's final report. Agreement has also been reached on the detail of what material the inquiry will publish in relation to records of conversations between Mr. Blair and President Bush, consisting with the principles agreed last year. I should like to place a copy of this letter on the inquiry's website on Wednesday, 21st of January. Yours sincerely, Sir John Chilcot.
What was it? Thorough and comprehensive, but there's no mention
But there will be some redactions.
There'll be some redactions, and there's no mention of the word truthful. So I don't think I hold much hope that we're going to get... And, oh dear, we can't actually get it out before the election.
What a surprise.
It's going to be out afterwards. Well, of course, the Chilcot inquiry and illegal wars overseas are not really important in Britain today, but TV licences are.
Apparently so. OK, so the BBC raised $3.72 billion each year from TV licensing. Each week, 3,000 people are issued with fines for not holding a licence, and 150,000 people are convicted each year. And in turn, they will each receive a criminal record. This article actually doesn't show proper evidence that women are the main people to be targeted, but the reporter does say licence dodgers are mainly women, and he spent a day at the courts whilst processing, and he believes that there was only about 3 people turned up in court when at the dates, and the rest is all, again, rubber stamp.
So in a minute we're going to be talking about the BBC, of course. Fascinating situation. We've got this huge propaganda machine which can hold people to ransom, frighten people while they're in their homes. And of course we're now hearing that the government thinks that if you haven't paid your licence fee, you may not be allowed to travel from a UK airport. We'll see whether we
Seriously?
can... This was a report, all sorts of measures coming in now. This is the dictatorship being drifted into Britain. Don't be surprised at all. And of course, I'll leave you to introduce the I. I've nearly made a comment there, but I won't.
Okay, so London viewers no doubt will be aware that the London Eye turned blood red, and these are the words in the article, blood red, at the weekend. Apparently it was to do with sponsorship deal with Coca-Cola, and now apparently all the carriages have the Coca-Cola logo put on them. Health campaigners are absolutely furious, saying it's promoting sugary drinks and a now healthy lifestyle. But I was intrigued by the use of blood red in the article instead of just red. So I just went on Google, had a little look and see if there was any significance to the date of January the 17th. And, well, I found an interesting little fact about that date, and it appears that January the 17th, it is a Satanic Revels celebration, which is a sexual holiday for females aged between 7 and 17.
Well, that's absolutely fascinating. I wonder whether that's a special message, of course, for all the Satanists on board Royal Navy warships, courtesy to the British Ministry of Defence, which has approved Satanism as a practice to be used on board our warships.
Well, you get the Satanic Bible now given out in some states of America now.
Absolutely correct. Worrying events in Britain, but we think we know what's behind it. If you're going to see what's really happening, you need to come to the UK column, and I hope people will actually be telling all of their friends and family about what we're trying to do. Just to give you an update on what is being shown when. This is basically UK column news, which is now repeated daily. On Monday, it's at 20:15, so 8:15 in the evening, Tuesday to Friday, 9 o'clock in the evening, 2100 hours if you prefer. And this is where you can actually go to on the website to see repeats of the programme. And UK Column News Daily Archive is available for 24 hours from approximately 3 p.m. each day. And if you go to the website, it's this big box currently occupied by Nigel Farage is the one you're interested in. We've also got UK Column News Audio MP3 podcast. Subscribe in iTunes, and that's available daily, Monday to Friday. And we'll also say, please add your ratings and review in iTunes, which is up here, because this helps boost what we're doing. And thank you very much for that. So a little bit of an advert for UK Column. Well, we'll switch from UK Column over to the British Constitution Group. And of course, we've been saying that at the end of February, beginning of March, that weekend, Friday through Sunday, we've got the Time for Action conference. We think things are now so serious in Britain, people need to act, and they need to act quickly. Well, we were intrigued to receive an email from a BBC current affairs reporter, Chloe Hajmathau, if I've pronounced that correctly. And she said she's working on a Radio 4 programme about the Magna Carta, and she's looking for audio clips of people who have evoked the Magna Carta. And she was fascinated by the people on the streets in Birkenhead when the judge was arrested. And she says, I have searched and I see the BBC did not cover this event. I've no idea why. I do see in the notes page that someone was trying to reach the BCG and did not get a response. Well, of course, the opposite was going on. The British Constitution Group was desperately trying to get mainstream media, including the BBC, involved. But despite 600 people on the streets of Birkenhead, not a single sign of any BBC reporters, including local ones. So we're intrigued that this lady was working to get information for BBC Radio 4 Law in Action programme. And here is the website for Law in Action, and it says that Joshua Rosenberg presents Radio 4's long-running legal magazine programme featuring reports on discussions and matters relating to the law. And we've got a bit more detail here about Law in Action. And they say Law in Action's aim is to lead the field in lively, jargon-free but rigorous analysis of the legal stories in, behind and ahead of the news. Well, we just add a bit to that and we say Jargon-free, rigorous analysis of legal stories, except where the analysis does not agree with the preconceived BBC view. Utter bias, and why do we say that? Well, we say it because of this. Here's the young lady's Twitter page, and what has she got to say? Well, this is what she said in the telephone call to us. She stated that Radio 4 Law in Action intended to run a programme on the Magna Carta. She wanted to film a clip of Birkenhead to be commented upon by 3 experts. She did not know why 600 people protested. She did not want any other informed public opinion on the importance of the Magna Carta. She did not want to interview any British Constitution Group members who've got considerable knowledge of Magna Carta. She told us she was working to a script from an unidentified manager, and she could not get off the phone quick enough. But this is what's fascinating, is that in her email, she says that she's a reporter producer for BBC Current Affairs. Sorry, I said Twitter, I got it wrong again, it's Facebook. On her Facebook, she states that she's a reporter producer working for BBC Global News. Well, why is this significant? Well, it's significant for this reason, that of course many people do not realise that the BBC now includes profit-making arms of the BBC. And so if we highlight here, it should come in, I think. Are you going to come up? Yes, here we are. BBC Global News is a limited company. It had a turnover of 91 million of sales. I believe that was for 12-13. It did unfortunately lose £800,000, but it is a private company. So when this lady approached us, is she approaching us as a private profit-making company, or is she approaching us as the BBC? We don't know. Either way, the BBC does not want to know what the public think of the Magna Carta, because they're going to tell us.
Because they're working to a script.
They're working to a script. This was a Freedom of Information request back in 2011, giving details of how many people are employed by the BBC. There's the total, 19,995. But look at the bottom, it says that various arms of the BBC, there's no information for the personnel because they are private companies. Significantly, BBC Global not included in that data back in 2011. So, well, here's the big man. He's a very happy James Harding from the BBC. He would be the ultimate director responsible for stories about the Magna Carta, and he's smiling on 340 grand a year. If you check the website, you can have a look at his responsibilities. But it says more than 80% of UK adults consumed BBC News each week. Well, we'd like to say those 80% of UK adults, be very careful, because the BBC doesn't want to tell the truth over the Magna Carta. Here's our spring conference, the time for action, and we mean that. And on that note, we'll...
Can I just mention one about Ben, please?
Oh, I see, certainly. Okay, let's see whether we can...
I just want to just mention this because it has made the mainstream news. Okay, our Ben, after his ordeal at Wormwood Scrubs and his appearance in court, where he was bailed until July 20th, where he is going to then appear at the Old Bailey, the courts yesterday lifted the ban on Ken Clark's name being mentioned in the press. Ben has been vocal about his life as a child actor and his role in the Cook Report Cash for Questions investigation, where Ben says he was inappropriately touched by Kenneth Clarke MP in Sir Ian Greer's office. Now, I know Ben would appreciate people putting the 20th of July into their diaries and going along to the Old Bailey to show support for Ben. And so it's finally hit the papers.
And of course, to see justice being done. This is the statement. This is about getting the public into courts to see that what goes on is proper and it is indeed justice and law. On that slide, just to finish, I'd like to highlight, of course, that we learned from the mainstream media that there was a reporting ban in place. And this probably explains why the reporting organisation Exaro kept tweeting out, "We must not talk about Ben Fellows." So it appears that there was some agreement out of sight of the general public between the court system and the prosecution legal team, Crown Prosecution Service presumably, and Britain's press and TV media.
Yeah.
And we'll just end on the note that, of course, it was Ben Fellows who pointed out that sexual abuse was rife in the BBC. So there we are. If you have had enough of the BBC, and we certainly have, don't bother switching on the BBC. Don't have a television licence if you can possibly manage it.
And watch the UK column instead.
Indeed. Thanks for joining us.
Cheers.
We'll be back same time tomorrow, 1 o'clock.
Bye.
Bye-bye.